Hello and welcome back to my podfics. This is recorded right after part 2 and part 1. So this will be the recording of chapter 3, part 3 and 4 of After the Fall by Innocent with one underscore reader. Now I'm recording both parts because this one is pretty short. Yeah, this one is pretty short, this chapter. Now on to the final part of the chapter. The entrance to the city appeared on the horizon like a scar. Salina, once a quiet refuge in the heart of Kansas, was now a mosaic of ruins and shattered fragments of what used to be civilization. Communication towers lay toppled like the bones of giants. Street lights hung at broken angles over cracked, scorched streets, and the wind carried charred newspapers advertising events that would never happen. Amid the wreckage, some lives still clung on. Thin children peered through broken windows, pulled back by nervous hands. Elderly figures shuffled between piles of debris, carrying makeshift bags. Every face that emerged from the shadows seemed to measure the two young heroes with a mix of curiosity and distrust, as if the sight of a uniform was a bitter reminder of how many times they had been abandoned before. The sound of Robin's boots striking the concrete echoed between the fractured walls, sharp and deliberate. Kid Flash kept pace, breathing hard as he adjusted Midoriya's limp weight on his back. Robin's cape wrapped like a shroud around the unconscious boy, fluttered with each cold gust of wind, the frayed ends rushing against the cracked asphalt. They passed a burned-out gas station, the rusted shells of cars still lined up as if waiting for their next turn at the pump, and the church without a roof, its bells shattered on the ground. The air carried a heavy mix of old smoke, rusted metal, and damp earth. It wasn't until they reached the edge of an old center square that Robin raised his arm, bringing them to a halt. The silence there was so deep that even the faint rustle of ashes felt too loud. Robin tapped his wrist computer. The holographic display flickered several times before stabilizing, showing a crude map of the city, and then a faint blinking blue point a few blocks away. "There's a Zeta tube still active," Robin murmured, eyes narrowing beneath the mask. "No idea how, but it's still online." Kid Flash let out a tired sigh. "Then that's our way out." Robin nodded and started forward. Weaving around the narrow streets, they moved in near silence, as if afraid that speaking too much would shatter the fragile focus of them going. The silence was a shield, and inside it they carried everything: the trauma, the uncertainty, the fear. As they drew closer to the signal, Robin stopped beside the shattered sign of an old diner, scanning the half-collapsed building around them. "There's barely anything left," he said quietly, his voice nearly swallowed by the cold wind whispering through the ruins. Kid Flash stopped beside him, adjusting Midoriya's weight again. "Not of us either," he added, his gaze distant. Robin clenched his fist, jaw tight. "You know, I always thought, even if the world ended, they'd find a way, that somehow they'd still be here." Robin let the cold air fill his lungs, the faint scent of smoke and dried blood clinging to it. "They're not," he finally said, the voice stripped of any illusions. "And maybe now it's just the two of us." Kid Flash gave a bitter laugh, shaking his head. "I don't know what hurts more, losing them, or realizing there's so few left to remember them." Robin didn't answer. He just kept walking. They crossed a few more scattered blocks, passing what used to be a park, now an open lot buried under rubble. and the overturned carcass of a police cruiser. One of the few standing walls, someone had scrawled in charcoal, "Heroes don't die." People watched from the shadows, but no one stepped forward. Trust in heroes was gone. Hope was gone. All that remained was survival. Finally, they reached it, an old, half-collapsed electrical substation. Miraculously, the Zeta Tube entry stood intact, its control panels still glowing faintly green. Robin stepped forward, brushing dust off the console. Every button felt heavier than it should. "It's operational," he confirmed, almost surprised, and for a second, suspicious. His finger hesitated over the keys. If this was the last functioning tube, if there was nowhere left to go. "Where to?" Kid Flash asked without looking up. Robin hesitated a moment longer before typing the sequence. "Batcave," he said quietly. The Kid Flash gaze lifted to the bat symbol still flickering on the interface. "You think anyone will be there?" Robin didn't answer right away. He stared at the emblem, once a sign of security, strategy, and strength. Now it was just an echo. "I don't know," he admitted, "but it's the only safe place we have left." Kid Flash gave a slow nod and stepped closer. Robin activated the stabilizers. The hum of the Zeta tube lifted the ruined room, louder than it should have been, as if the walls themselves were warning them. His fingers lingered over the console, brushing away the grit. He half expected the green glow to flicker and die before they could step through. There were no guarantees. This might be the last time the system ever worked. And on the other side, there might be nothing but darkness. Kid Flash shifted Midoriya's weight again, saying nothing. He just looked at Robin as if willing him to be certain, knowing full well there was no such thing as certainty anymore. When Robin pulled the lever, the floor trembled, vibration crawling up through his leg, as if the structure itself was fighting to keep the jump stable. For a heartbeat, the green flash lit their faces, revealing exhaustion, battle scars, and something deeper. The fear that no one would be there to meet them. And then they were gone. Part 4. The green light of the Zeta tube faded with a brief hiss. Silence settled heavily over the Batcave. The place was shrouded in shadows. Only a few low spotlights along the walkways cast timid beams, stretching long shadows over the jagged stone walls. Distant drip of water echoed, rhythmic, as if marking every second since this sanctuary had lost its guardian. Robin stepped off the platform with a slight stumble, his body exhausted. Just behind him, Kid Flash emerged, carrying Midoriya on his back. Wrapped in the dark cape, more a shroud than a hero's mantle. Dick felt the sting of sweat under his crooked mask. In his left hand, he gripped the torn pieces of Midoriya's suit, salvaged from the cocoon. They weren't just scraps of fabric and metal. They were proof that, in the middle of ruin, some things were still worth keeping. Footsteps echoed from the top of the metal staircase. Firm, deliberate steps. Familiar ones. Robin lifted his head, and for a moment time seemed to stretch. Every strike of a soul against metal rang like an echo from another life. Nights when, after long missions, Alfred would descend calmly to greet him with a warm towel and a dry remark. But now there was something different. Each step carried a slow, almost dragging weight, as if even the sound itself had grown tired. And then Alfred Pennyworth appeared. He wore his eternal dark suit. Though the tie was slightly askew, his hair, once perfectly combed, now fell loosely over his forehead. Robin noticed with a pang there were more white strands. Then he remembered the deep set eyes, marked by sleepless nights, locked onto him. Alfred stopped at the top of the steps, unmoving, and in that instant Dick saw a faint tremor in the hand holding the silver tray. What followed lasted only a moment, but long enough for both to feel the weight of the months that had kept reunions like this apart. The tray slipped from his hands, the impact ringing alongside the crash of shattering porcelain. Alfred's gaze didn't waver. Master Richard. The voice came out as a whisper, trembling, laden with relief and pain. Dick opened his mouth to answer, but nothing came. His throat closed, and his eyes, locked on Alfred, began to lose focus. The images rushed back, sharp and cutting, like blades. The drone feeds flickering on the screen as he and Wally watched helplessly from a safe distance. Interference alerts mixing with the muffled sound of familiar voices over the comms. The lines of heroes advancing towards the enemy ships. And then, the light. Not just any flash, but an incandescent beam so intense it wrapped the world's colors. He saw Diana vanish in golden flames, Clark's cape torn apart in the air like ash, and lastly, Bruce's silhouette, still for an instant, before being swallowed by the beam, gone without even a shadow left behind. What lingered wasn't the sound of the blast, but the silence after, a cold, unreal silence that not even drone static could fill. It was Alfred who moved first. His footsteps echoed louder than they should, each strike on the metal stairs carrying the weight of all the years and all the losses. When he reached the boy, he hesitated just long enough to make sure the figure before him wasn't another cruel mirage. Then he closed the space between them and pulled him close, wrapping him in a firm, almost crushing embrace. Dick froze. He felt the warmth of Alfred's suit against his chilled skin, the faint scent of old coffee mixed with paper, the same smell he remembered from mornings in the manor. From the manor. For a moment, there was no Batcave, no cake, no mask. Just the whole of a man who had been time and time again, the anchor that kept him whole. The emotional blow landed before the physical reaction. Dick didn't cry, but his body gave way, his shoulders dropping the weight of the mission and the loss spilling out of his head, out as if he had finally found somewhere to set it down. Alfred kept one hand firm on his bag and the other at his nape, just like the nights when the boy woke screaming, but from nightmares. Bruce insisted he needed to learn to face alone. In that embrace, Dick wasn't the hero who survived. He was the son who had came home, and at home, though wounded, still stood. He didn't come back, did he? Alfred asked, his voice low but steady. Dick swallowed hard before answering. The image struck again, the view from the drones. The League's final charge, beams of energy slicing like the sky like blades of black light, and then nothing but silence, and heat radiating from the screen until it felt like the fire was burning slow his own skin. Neither him nor any of them, he said, and the echo of those words seemed to vanish into the height of the ceiling. Alfred closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing the blow of news he had already known to be true. When he opened them again, there was pain, but also that stoic spark that had always kept him standing. The silence that followed was heavy, almost suffocating. Kid Flash remained at a distance, respecting the moment, though his face was tight, though close to breaking. Alfred loosened his embrace, resting a hand on Dick's shoulder before looking at Midoriya. And this young man? A friend, Dick replied, discreetly wiping his eyes. He saved the world, or at least what's left of it. Alfred nodded, as if he'd known already. He moved towards Kid Flash, helping him lay Midoriya down on one of the medical platforms. Carefully, he adjusted the cape around the boy and rested his hands on his forehead. Feverish, but stable, he said, activating the sensors. Dick walked towards the alcove where the suit stood on display. His own was there, almost untouched, except for the dust. Beside it, Bruce's suit remained somber, motionless, empty. He touched the bat emblem with his fingertips. I thought he'd come back, Dick said, his tone tethering between confession and defiance. Always thought that, even when the lead fell, even when the city started going dark, I thought he'd find a way. He always does. Alfred stepped closer, his face in shadow, but his eyes fixed on him. He always comes back, he agreed. But this time, Master Richard, I don't believe there was a way, and it wasn't for lack of trying. Dick's gaze drifted back on that Bruce's suit, hanging like a silent spectre, and the old touch of the bat symbol seemed to draw something harder than grief from within him. Resolve. Someone has to carry on. If it's not me. He drew a breath. There's no one left. No, Alfred corrected, his hand firm on Dick's shoulder. It's not just about carrying on what he did. It's about not losing yourself, trying to be him. The world has already lost that man. Don't let it lose Richard too. For a moment, Dick wanted to argue, but the weight of those words silenced him. His gaze slid to Midoriya, lying motionless under the cold light of scanners. The young face, marked by small scars, looked peaceful now. But Robin knew. Behind the stillness, there was a weight that the rest could never erase. I think he's lost a lot too, he murmured. Friends, allies, even someone he thought of as family. But he kept fighting, even when his world was falling apart. Alfred followed his gaze, his features softening. Then he understands. Understands what? Dick asked, glancing back at the butler. What it means to fight when hope is no longer within reach. Alfred said, calm but heavy with meaning. What it means to stand up for the thousandth time, even without knowing if there will be another. Dick took a deep breath, letting those words sink in. He felt there was something in Midoriya that mirrored him, not in looks, not in manner, but in the weight he carried. Maybe if they could they could both keep standing. One could stop the other from sinking. Perhaps, together, you can find a new path, Alfred said, almost as if reading his thoughts. Dick didn't answer right away, but for the first time since stepping through the Zeta tube, it didn't feel like he was just surviving. There was a possibility, however small, of building something again. Not that they had before, but something new. As strange as it felt to think that about someone he had only just met. And that was it for part 3 and 4 of chapter 3 of After the Fall by Innocent with one N _ reader. Go check them out, link in the description. And I'm not sure when this will be posted, but if it's still like if it's like before the let me see the date. Let me see if it's posted before the first week of February, then go vote. Go vote in if it's posted before like the second week of February, then go vote in my community post on I don't know if it's called community posts or anything. It's just like posts. Yeah, in my posts, not videos. Go vote and see which of the 4 I should, record. I already asked about a couple of yeah, I got the go ahead from 3 of them. Did I ask? Did I ask for the? Anyways, just go vote. And yeah, I don't think I have any bloopers for this one, so